A very good morning to you once again. It's Wednesday here from Lagos, Nigeria, the center of activities, business activities and commercial nerve center of Nigeria. My name is Ayo Jim and this is Early Exchange. Of course, I have with me Blessing Eichi. Good morning to you, Blessing.
Good morning, Ayo. Hello, welcome to Early Exchange, and it's great to know that you make time to be part of the show. Beginning today's edition of the program, we'll start with news. Ola Oluwawe is standing by to update you on current happenings around the globe. Hello, Ola.
Thank you very much, Blessing Eiche. Good morning, Ayo Jimmy, and good morning to you out there. Welcome to the morning news update on the Early Exchange. I am Ola Oluwawe. I must say that yesterday was a very interesting day all around the world, and I'm here to bring you the update. All you just need to do is stay tuned. We start with Nigerian news as usual. The Chief Executive Officer of Africa Development Studies Center, ADSC, Ambassador Victor Walsh Oluwafemi, has applauded the courage and resoluteness of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to come up with and stand by the measures aimed at revitalizing Nigeria's as listed in a State of the Nation broadcast on Monday. Ambassador Victor believes the 125 billion naira promised micro, small and medium-sized enterprises, MSMEs, and the informal sector in the president's speech will indeed support their growth and development. He also praised the planned 75 billion naira allocation to strengthen the manufacturing sector to create jobs and support 75 enterprises, while also commending the president's courage to remove fuel subsidies and end multiple exchange rates for economic stabilization. He urged stakeholders, including labor unions, to engage in constructive dialogue with the government rather than resort to strike for sustainable economic development. Senator Sunday Karimi, the representative for Kogi West, took a stance against former Kaduna State Governor Nasir El-Rufai yesterday during the ministerial screening with a petition concerning the issue of insecurity in southern Kaduna during El-Rufai's tenure. But the Senate President, Godswill Akpabio, did not entertain the petition. Instead, he asked the former governor to take a bow. This was after Malam El-Rufai answered questions from the lawmakers, highlighting his achievements as the governor and former FCT minister. He faced the lawmakers following Olawale Edun's session. Meanwhile, former Lagos Commissioner Olawale Edun assured Nigerian lawmakers that if chosen as finance minister or minister of the economy, he would strive for continuous improvement in the country's fiscal situation at both the federal and state levels. His focus would be on reducing the country's debt and curbing the soaring foreign exchange rates. Additionally, he expressed plans to implement a computerized system to eliminate wastage and debt, leading to a positive fiscal turnaround. These assurances came after Senate President Akpabio, Senator Aline Dume, and other lawmakers questioned him about replicating his successes as Commissioner for Finance in Lagos if appointed as Minister of Finance. Supporting his nomination, the Senate caucus from Ogun State, represented by Senator Solomon Adiola, Benga Daniel, and Afolabi Salisu, praised Olawale Edun as one of the best candidates from the state and urged their colleagues to confirm him for the ministerial role in Tinubu's government. Following the session, Senator Akpabio asked Mr. Edun to take a bow and leave, signaling his approval for the nominee. Away from that, the Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu yesterday visited the site of the private helicopter crash in Ikeja and expressed relief that no lives were lost. He commended the first responders and residents who helped in the rescue efforts. The governor's chief press secretary, Gbega Kosile, in a statement, described the aircraft as a single-engine fixed-wing Jabiru aircraft with registration number 5NCCQ. It also confirmed that the 2 occupants of the helicopter were successfully rescued and are receiving treatment at the hospital. The governor mentioned that the Nigerian Safety Investigation Bureau, NSIB, will conduct a thorough investigation into the crash. Now, the Ekiti State Governor, Mr. Biodun Yebanji, has appointed 21 new commissioners and 14 special advisors to strengthen and reposition the State Executive Council following their successful screening and confirmation by the State Assembly. The inauguration of the appointees is scheduled for the 8th of August 2023, and they are expected to assume their respective roles immediately after making necessary arrangements. The appointees are expected to use the 1 week between the announcement and the inauguration date to make the necessary arrangements, including disengagement from their previous working places, travels, and other plans, as they will be resuming work in their respective offices immediately. Now, Governor Abdurrahman Abdurazak of Kwara State has directed that 10,000 naira be paid to students of Kwara origin studying in public-owned tertiary institutions across the country. This one-off support is not the previous bursary award, which only covered final year students. Additionally, he has approved a stipend of 10,000 naira each for specific categories of security agents who are considered the first line of defense. The disbursement of this fund will be coordinated through the Kwara State Social Investment Program (KWASEP) office. The special support will be overseen by a government committee headed by Professor Shehu Rahim Adaramaja, chairman of the Kwara State Universal Basic Education Board, with representatives from various departments and student associations. The committee will provide a website or a web link for eligible students to apply for the support within the designated time frame, submitting the necessary information and documents. The Federal Capital Territory Internal Revenue Service, FCT-IRS, has reported a substantial increase in revenue collection, generating 98 billion naira from January to July 2023. The executive chairman of FCT-IRS, Mr. Haruna Abdullahi, attributed this impressive growth to effective strategies and practices being implemented by the service. He commended the staff for their exceptional performance and urged them to maintain their commitment, aiming to surpass the revenue target set for the year. Mr. Abdullahi emphasized the importance of their continued dedication, particularly during a time when governments are striving to enhance their revenue basis. Under his leadership, the management of FCT-IRS has focused on establishing a robust institutional framework to support the service's operations, which has contributed to the remarkable results achieved. And in sports development, the round of 16 at the 2023 Women's World Cup will see Nigeria's Super Falcons facing England next. Remember that Nigeria finished as runners-up in Group B with 5 points after a goalless draw with England. The European champions topped Group D with 9 points, setting up the match with coach Randy Waldrum's team. The game between Nigeria and England is scheduled for Monday, August 7th, 2023 at 8:30 in the morning. Now, Nigerian Afrobeats musician Wizkid has become the first African artist to receive the prestigious Brit Billion Award, an award that recognizes artists who have surpassed the 1 billion digital streams in the United Kingdom. The Brit Awards made the announcement on X, formerly known as Twitter, stating that they presented the award to Wizkid following his recent performance at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in London on Saturday. Additionally, Wizkid's fourth album, Made in Lagos, achieved gold certification in the US in year 2022 after selling over 500,000 copies, marking another groundbreaking accomplishment for an African artist. Wizkid's achievement and recognition represents a positive development in the promotion of African music and culture on the global stage, paving the way for more opportunities, collaborations, and appreciation of African artists and their contributions to the music industry worldwide. As I gradually move away from Nigeria, Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu was in Cotonou yesterday to participate in the 63rd independence anniversary of the Republic of Benin, and he was warmly received by President Patrice Talon and other government officials, accompanied by political aides and 6 governors, including Babajide Sanwo-Olu, Seyi Makinde, Abdurrahman Abdurazak, Nasir Idris, and Mohammed Umar Bago. This marks the 3rd meeting between President Tinubu and President Talon. During their interactions, they discussed the importance of enhancing cultural trade and economic relations between their countries with a focus on joint border patrols and harmonizing regulations. Meanwhile, Burkina Faso and Mali has cautioned against any military intervention in Niger, stating that such action to restore deposed President Mohamed Bazoum would be seen as a declaration of war against their nations. The two countries governed by military-backed administrations conveyed this message through joint statement aired on their national broadcasters. They also expressed refusal to comply with the illegal, illegitimate, and inhuman sanctions, what they call it, imposed on the people and authorities of Niger. Away from that, in response to anti-French sentiment following last week's coup in Niger, France has decided to evacuate its citizens from the country. Germany has also encouraged its nationals to take up France's offer of assistance, and Italy is arranging a flight for its citizens. As evacuations of Western citizens start, tensions remain high, and Niger's junta vows to defend the country from any aggression by regional or Western powers, accusing France of planning military intervention. French Foreign Minister Catherine Colonna denied the allegation, but she suggested that Russia might take advantage of the situation. The situation remains fluid, with the calm reported in Niamey on Tuesday amid ongoing diplomatic efforts and regional concerns. Now, Senegal's Interior Ministry has dissolved the political party of opposition leader Ousmane Sonko, the patriot of Senegal, PASTEF, for allegedly inciting unrest during violent protests in Dakar last month. The government accused PASTEF leaders of frequently calling on their supporters to engage in insurrectional movements, resulting in loss of life, injuries, and looting of public and private property. This move marks the latest development in the ongoing power struggle between President Macky Sall's ruling party and Sonko's PASTEF, with supporters of the latter claiming that Sall has used fabricated charges to sideline the popular opponent ahead of the upcoming election. Now to the Middle East. The United Arab Emirates Energy Minister and Infrastructure, Sahel Al-Mazroui, has launched the Salama 365 project, which aims to enhance public safety through innovative solutions and interactive warning systems. In collaboration with stakeholders from the federal, local, and private sectors, the project will address accident black spots, improve pedestrian crossings, predict floods, and implement a safe, smart school model. In the pilot phase, 16 dams and 9 main valleys will be monitored. The project is expected to significantly reduce road fatalities and improve the country's performance in global safety indexes. Now, the Lebanese Central Bank's new interim chief, Wassim Mansouri, has called on the government to implement long overdue reforms as it confirmed its position as acting head, replacing Raad Salameh, who served as the chief for 30 years. Political factions failed to appoint a successor to Salameh, causing instability amid the country's ongoing 4-year-long financial crisis. Mansouri, the vice governor of Bank du Liban, is scheduled to take over from Salameh on Tuesday. During a news conference, Mansouri announced the Bank du Liban's plan to impose strict restrictions on lending to the government, gradually phasing out such funding completely. He advocated for phasing out the controversial exchange platform Safe Rafa and lifting the peg on the local currency. Now, the Swiss embassy in New Delhi has asked tour operators to stop accepting Schengen visa applications due to an overwhelming number of requests. It says officials can no longer process further applications for group travels until at least September. Therefore, Swiss tour operators in India have been advised to plan group travels for a later date to ensure timely processing of visa applications. This decision has left travel operators unhappy, as group tours to foreign destinations are highly profitable in India. The lack of staff at Swiss embassies is attributed to the backlog of applications in Schengen countries, with some applications being put on hold or pending. Germany, France, and Italy are among the countries experiencing delays in processing visa applications. And United States job openings declined to the lowest level in over 2 years this June, but they remain at levels indicative of a tight labor market despite the Federal Reserve's interest rate increases. The Labour Department's Job Openings and Labour Turnover Survey, JOLTS report, showed a decrease in job openings, indicating that employers were holding on to workers amid difficulties in finding labour during the COVID-19 pandemic. There were 1.6 billion job openings. I take that again. There were 1.6 million openings for every unemployed person in June, showing little change from May. The resilience of the labour market suggests that the Federal Reserve may maintain higher interest rate for an extended period, as the central bank has been raising rates to combat high inflation. Job openings dropped to 9.582 million, the lowest since April 2021, with the healthcare and social assistance sectors seeing an increase in vacancies, while transportation, warehousing, and utilities had fewer open positions. Hiring also declined, especially in durable goods, manufacturing, and finance, as well as insurance. Although the labour market remains strong, workers seem less inclined to change jobs, as resignations dropped significantly in June. Despite JOLTS reports, the continued strength in the labour market is likely to keep federal officials cautious, according to economists. Now, San Francisco authorities are billing Elon Musk's company, X, formerly known as Twitter, as it placed an unauthorized flashing X sign on the roof of its headquarters as part of its rebrand. The sign, which was put up last Friday, garnered 24 complaints over the weekend. Consequently, X will be charged for the cost of building permits for both the installation and removal of the sign. The authorities stated that the company did not have permission for the sign and will also be required to cover the expenses of the Department of Building Inspection and the Planning Department's investigation period. And that's the morning news update for today. Stay tuned to the early exchange for detailed analysis of some of the stories. Back to you, Ayo and Blessing. I am Ola Oluwawe. Thank you for watching.
Thanks a lot for the news. Getting now to the front burner issues as contained in the news. We're looking at the applause that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has received on his strategic plan to revitalize the economy and cushion the effects of the removal of subsidy. Here with us in the studio is the Director, Policy and Research, Africa Development Studies Center, Idausa Osamanze. Good morning, sir.
Blessing, good morning. Ayo, good morning.
A very good morning to you here. Okay, ADSC has made a statement, so to speak, applauding President Tinubu's courage to come out with a roadmap towards economic recovery. Of course, at a particular time like this, one has to, have enough guts to identify with maybe an opinion that's not very popular now. We are talking about Labour planning to embark on strike, which by then must have been started this morning, except my information is wrong. And but then, in the midst of all this, some people are still able to take a deeper dive, look deeper into the issues beyond the surface, and see that okay, maybe we are going through short-term pains now, but then in the end, we'll have something to to smile about. This is what the ADSC boss is talking about. You are from the ADSC. Why this at this point in time?
Well, I think it's a very timely message. Change is a very difficult process, and once people embark on change, you are going to have a lot of resistance, people who feels that, of course, the pains are going to be very high. And chances are that if, as a leader of the change process, you are not also finding support from within and without, chances are that you're also going to lose focus. So what the press release of the CEO of ADSC has done is just to say, President Tombo, for you, we're behind you. We know that the pains are there. We cannot deny that fact. But like they say, without pain, no gain.
All right, moving to the Minister nominee screening at the Senate, former Lagos Commissioner Olawale Edun has assured Nigerian lawmakers that if chosen as Finance Minister or Minister of the Economy, he would strive for continuous improvement in the country's fiscal situation. Now, he mentioned that he will focus on reducing the country's debt and curb the soaring foreign exchange rates. Reducing Nigeria's debt profile.
I don't think that's exactly what Olawale Edun said, that he was going to reduce the debt profile.
Focus on reducing.
Yeah. It's not reducing the debt profile, so to speak. If you had listened to him very carefully yesterday, what he was saying is that debt is not necessarily bad. What is bad is the fact that we are not producing. And so you see the debt to revenue ratio is a very wide gap. So what government intend to do is to see how to shore up production so that we can be in the threshold, even if we need to borrow for infrastructure, that it will be convenient for the nation to borrow. I think that's the interpretation that you should see from what he's saying. Yeah, because the real issue here is that over the years, like almost all stakeholders that agree, subsidy has taken so much from the nation. And so what this current regime is doing is to see how to re-engineer the economy, oil the wheel of the economy, so that there's productive or production activity going on. And as this is going on and government is injecting more money into the system, you will see that the macroeconomic indices will begin to respond in the positive. Okay. But it's not something that is going to be like yesterday.
Okay, we do know that economic discussions are deeper than they appear on the surface. On the surface, one might just say, okay, debt reduction and so on and so forth. But then, like you said, it's much more deeper than that. Because I do remember that he mentioned the fact that, okay, it would take measures to curb the soaring FX rates in Nigeria. Yes. And that, of course, might be interpreted as, okay, he has the magic wand to just do it like that. But then we have to show up production and ensure that we have this balance of trade adjustment so that we don't run into deficit balance of trade, which is one of those things he said yesterday. And of course, he mentioned about eliminating wastages, because when you make gains into the economy and you still have loopholes through which the gains, are siphoned away, it's a zero-sum game, like they always say.
Yes, having a computerized system that eliminates wastage, that's very key, because it helps you track how revenue comes in and the spendings, where they go to, unlike where you have to do the book system and then you have to start reconciling records and all of that. So it's a welcome one, but it's up to...
I think that they're actually coming in a very timely an opportune time at this, because again, BPP has actually gotten to that point where the former president has actually endorsed the act empowering BPP to computerize, in other words, to use the buzzword e-governance.
E-governance.
So that process is already on. So it is just the deployment that they will need to do. And we're thankful to God that we have somebody with the courage, because a lot of public officers actually abhor the e-governance because it shows out a lot of doors. But given the experience of Lagos State in 1999-2000, with that courage to close all the gap, if that is done at the national level, there will be huge savings and losses will be minimal. Then, of course, we can actually see in the broader perspective the revenue profile of government.
Okay, away from that, let's take a look at the ongoing Women's World Cup. Yes, Nigeria is facing an uphill task. Our women, our ladies that we celebrated, we know that they are up to the task. Of course, you wouldn't write off England. England is a superpower, so to speak, in the world of women's football. They had 9 points. 9 points at the first stage of the tournament. And now, we're in the round of 16. We are facing them. We just barely had, I think, 5 points or thereabouts. Monday is the day. What are our chances? Am I supposed to ask you?
Well, I may not be able to say exactly what our chances are, but I can tell you that given the records of the Super Falcons, they are a formidable team, and it's no team to just you brush aside and say, hey, what can they do? Though they will be facing England, but I trust that they're going to put up a good fight, and it's going to be a very competitive game, because everyone wants to proceed on to the next stage, and so we can only be optimistic that they would deliver.
Yeah, some people are comparing it to the fight between Goliath and David in the Bible. Of course, let the Goliath realize that he shouldn't underrate
Yes,
David,
there's no
because
side
sometimes in football there are surprises, and by the reason of participation, the Falcons have been there over and over again. Yet they may not have made a lot of big strides or to advance to the later stages, but then there is this experience that comes with being there over and over again, and that experience can count for them. And you know what? When you know that you are like the underdog in a particular game, there is this resoluteness to show the world what you can do, how big you can go, and what surprises you can spring. That might be what will happen this because if you compare apple to apple on paper, the Falcons really can't stand England, really.
Yeah, but you see, football is just about 11 people playing against 11 people.
Well, the quality matters as well.
Yeah, why talk about quality? I think the real issue is not quality in this direction. It's also to boost the confidence of the girls out there in the field, that they are just as human as they are. There's nothing that's supernatural about them. And once confidence is put into play, and they are not making mistakes in terms of how passes are distributed, you see, victory is sure.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of effort should be put into maintaining balance and control in the first half. Because when you're playing a side that has seems to have more strength than you in terms of experience, in terms of records, of how they've dominated within the space. Now we're talking about the Women World Cup. Now, if they're able to maintain that control or destabilize within the first half, you'll be doing a catch-up game in the second half. So to be able to maintain control and sure that they play their game, they're not forced to become defensive, it will give them a lot of advantage. Because when they push you to become defensive, then they mount more pressure on your goal space, and that gives room for a lot of errors to start to happen. So I think we should play our best first. We should play our best first and not keep them for reserve. We need to win the match before we talk about the next game after that.
I agree with Blessing very seriously, because the best way to defend is offense.
Oh, well,
they should go out there to win, and not necessarily to go and be defending the goal.
There is
because when you defend, you make a lot of mistakes.
Okay, now we are in a zone now that is a bit controversial. Okay, there is a limit to how much offense you can mount when you really don't have that muscle power to do that. But then, also, Mourinho would always say that just minimize your error chances. Once you can keep the errors at bay, then maybe you'll be able to, strike when you have an opening. Because at the end of the day, okay, when you have a game of football, one team is out there to win the game, one is out there not to lose the game, and there are two different mindsets essentially. Of course, you are saying that they should come there with the mindset of coming to win the game. But
take anxiety away completely from their
But they should not forget
where the error comes from.
Shut down the error chances. That's very key to them.
Okay. They should not be anxious for anything.
Yes.
They should be confident on the pitch. England, they are beatable, and of course, victory is possible.
Very possible.
We can only wish them well. We'll be behind you, and we'll be here to celebrate your success when you beat England eventually. Okay.
Moving on to entertainment, Nigerian Afrobeat musician Wizkid has become the first African artist to receive the prestigious Brit Billion Award. That's an award recognizes artists who have surpassed 1 billion digital streams in the United Kingdom. Now, if I was Wizkid manager at this point, I'll begin to calculate what that translates to in terms of the money.
Oh, well, beyond money is the issue of dominating a particular space, or let me say, having your say in a space that was either dominated by some other people. I'm impressed by what Nigerian musicians are doing on the music scene. There was a time in this country when even our local parties, foreign music dominated. But now you hardly hear that. And now we have now gone beyond dominating our own local terrain to going overseas. And now if one person has 1 billion streams of a particular song, then that speaks volumes. Beyond the money that comes to him, it is the cloud that comes to Nigeria. It is the acceptance that we have. It's a way of, okay, do I say colonizing the music terrain, really? We are now bestriding it like a colossus, which is good, and it's an encouragement for other young and upcoming artists in the world of music. Of course, it will come with remittances, diaspora remittances, like they always say.
Congratulations to Wizkid. It's so refreshing to know that why at home a lot seems not be right, that our young people are out there also putting our faces in the global map about things that are being done right. You know, when you travel and you see people dancing to your rhythm, it's something of joy that you say that whether they even understand what is being said or not, but that the rhythm is pulling them out to the dance floor is something that is very commendable. We say to young Nigerians who are there in the entertainment world, kudos to you, keep winning laurels and then bringing good repute to our dear country.
Okay, over now to the Middle East. The UAE Energy Minister for Energy and Infrastructure, Suhail Al-Mazuri, has launched the Salama 365 project, which aims to enhance public safety through innovative solutions, and a lot there. Now, some things came to the fore here. Now, the project is expected to significantly reduce road fatalities and improve the country's performance in global safety indices. I'm speaking of a country or a government that is proactive, that is thinking ahead. Because if you look at the components of this particular initiative, we're talking about addressing accident black spots, improving pedestrian crossings, and predict floods, which is where I actually want to stop here. They are even going ahead to predict floods so they can mitigate against it. This is proactivity, and we've been saying that governments should not be just reactive; they should be proactive, and the UAE is setting an example here.
This is not just this is just one small area where UAE pioneers innovation and thinking globally, and that's because they pride themselves in creating an atmosphere where people can feel safe. Don't forget that the core vision of United Arab Emirates is to ensure that people come to UAE and see it as a safe place where everything is excellent. And so they think before problem comes, and that's what leadership is actually all about, that you are able to foresee a trouble before it comes. And they have a lot first in various areas. The first country in the world to even to have created a ministry for artificial intelligence. Isn't that surprising?
It's a surprise. It's a surprise.
And it's good. It helps with planning. It helps with reducing a lot of wastage in terms of finances that would have been put into reactively addressing those issues, particularly flooding. And as it also has to do with identifying accident spots and all of that.
Do I tell you something about flooding in UAE? You know, they are no natural rain. They actually seeded rain.
So why are we talking about flooding there? If there are seeded rains.
So they are seeded rain. They are not natural rain in UAE. You hardly find rain. Maybe in 2 years, maybe once. But most of the time, it's seeded rain. And because of the terrain, once those rain are seeded and they pour down, the road is flooded. But there are also drainages that actually move them away. See, because the city is becoming developed now, a lot is happening. So there's a need to actually focus on this to ensure that the channels are working and the waterways are not blocked.
This is a model that I think other countries should copy. By other countries, now I'm talking about Nigeria and African countries. We know that flooding is one issue that is prevalent in parts of Nigeria and also parts of Africa. So if we can just have some prediction. We know that the meteorological department sometimes give us a forecast and tell you, oh, this year you will have higher rates of rainfall and all of that. But if we can just be prepared, it will help a lot.
I think we're trying our best in preparing for flood, really. But when you talk about preparation for flood, you're talking about evacuating people from flood-prone areas to areas of safety. But the question is, to where exactly?
That's
we are a country of 220 million and above, and our landmass is not, increasing by the day. Of course, it has to be a long-term thing. In the short term, maybe people will just have to be responsible for their own safety, as if that needs some kind of rocket science to preach. But at the government level, we are trying our best, I want to assume. Of course, there is always room for improvements, really.
Yeah, room for improvement.
There is room for improvement, I agree. But, you know, when it comes to evacuation, when we get to seasons of heavy flooding and people in those areas are asked to evacuate, you mentioned to where would they evacuate? So that's often the challenge. Now, a time ago, that should be around 2012 when there was the flooding issue in some parts of the country. Some persons wanted to evacuate where they were, but they had so much roots around there, they didn't really have where to move to. It is easy when one person is moving, but what if you have to move an entire family? So I think those are things that government should begin to look at ahead of time, not when it happens and then they're being relocated into primary schools and places that are unfit for human habitation.
Talk about preparing for the raining day. Okay, on the very last note here, in response to anti-French sentiments following last week's coup in Niger, France has decided to evacuate its citizens from the country, and Germany has also encouraged its nationals to take up France's offer of assistance. Now, Niger is in a contest on the wrong side of history as we speak, because the whole world is saying coup is old-fashioned, and whatever gains they must have amassed from international collaborations, they are losing just because of the decision of just one particular set of people. And now it doesn't look good for them the way I see it, because we need one another to rise. It's a global village where we need the strength of this country and strength of this country to collectively move to the next level. Now Niger is losing every form of assistance it has had in the past, or collaboration.
Yeah, that's expected, and I actually expect that ECOWAS also strengthen this very serious warning to send these signals. Yesterday there was also reported that there were an attempt coup in Syria alone. And of course, because like we said, when you have one coup, it seems to spread, like they say. So we must find a way to curtail it. We may not go in arms against Niger Republic, Mali or Gabon, but I think that there should be stern economic measure, and let us see how they survive.
Okay. And I think governments too should, the ECOWAS and African governments should begin to put more effort into ensuring that citizens get the dividends of democracy. They are satisfied with the governance that they get. Because if they're not satisfied, then it's going to be an issue that will recall.
Okay, so that is the much we can take from the news update today. We take a very short break now, and when we return, we'll take a look at logistics and supply chain management. What does that mean, and how does it play out in business? Don't go anywhere.
All right, it's time for us to look at the process of acquiring, storing, and transporting resources to their final destination, to the correct people who need them, and at the right time. But before we get into the discussion, let's watch this report on logistics.
The global logistic market in 2022 attained a value of $9.96 trillion, driven by the increased popularity of online shopping and the rapid growth of the e-commerce industry. Also, according to report, this market is expected to be worth around $18.23 trillion by 2030, with a significant compound annual growth rate (CAGR) of 10.7% from 2023 to 2030. Similarly, it is worthy of note to see that Nigeria's logistic market is about $60 billion, but it has the potential to increase significantly in the nearest future, according to recent speculations from experts in the industry. However, This industry has not been without its characteristic problems bedeviling other sectors of the economy, like poor infrastructure, multiple taxations, tax regulations, and hostile business environment. Similarly, logistics companies in Nigeria had to face significant security challenges like theft, vandalism, and attacks on cargo, which in turn have posed a risk to the safety of personnel, assets, and the timely delivery of goods. Nevertheless, experts advise that solving these challenges would require careful planning, invest in technology, effective risk management, and constant adaptation to changing market conditions. The Nigeria's logistic market has the potential to grow into a multi-billion market if the government could create a more favorable environment for private investors to invest in. Juvi Ufiene, reporting for Souq News.
All right, thanks, Juvi Ofiene, for the report on logistics and supply chain management. This is very key to the operations of businesses. And so we will be having joining us on this discussion the Executive Director, Sales and Marketing, Elizade Nigeria Limited. He'll be joining us via Zoom. But before that time, Ayo, the logistics and supply chain management as it concerns businesses and firms, it's now an issue that businesses do not just leave to maybe a few people just handle. It's an intentional thing because of how relevant it is to the functionality of the business, particularly when you talk about businesses that are into manufacturing and maybe even supply.
Well, before COVID-19 disruption of the supply chain management, the word logistics and supply chain itself sounded vague to most people. But then when there was lockdown and we couldn't move goods and resources from one part of the world to another, then we felt the impact of that, and then it had more meaning. Even of recent, the Ukraine-Russia war clearly, marked another point of disruption along that supply chain management belt. Now, people just realize that the price of bread has gone up in Nigeria. They have no idea that it is because wheat could not move from one part of the world to the other. Now, it has become a critical issue to be discussed. If you don't pay attention to supply chain management, these are the kind of things that happen. The disruptions are natural, experts will tell you, but how you prepare for them matters. Then one other thing, people confuse logistics with supply chain management, when essentially logistics is just a subset of supply chain management. So we have our guest standing by on Zoom, Mr. Ademola Philip Adewumi. He is an accomplished visionary executive management and sales and marketing leader with over 20 years work experience, with a proven track record of increasing sales, growing market share, and profitability. First and foremost, let us establish that we can hear him and he can actually hear us. Good morning, Mr. Philip. Hello, can you repeat your greetings? Good morning. Please unmute yourself. Or could you please talk to us? Good morning. Okay, Mr. Adewumi is still having some issues there with audio. Now, when it was read in the news, I mean, in the report, that the business in Nigeria, the logistics business in Nigeria is about $60 billion. No wonder we have a lot of unregulated activities there, because every now and then you see one bike man and you see the inscription something logistics,
dispatch
riders who are claiming to be into the business of logistics, because it's obviously a very lucrative one in Nigeria.
Yes, it is very lucrative, but you rightly mentioned that logistics is just a subset of supply chain management. But the logistics business has opened up a lot of other businesses because of how key they are. Because for you to effectively run supply chain management, you would need those who would cover the logistics of your resources and making sure that they get to the right people at the right time. Now, if you are into any kind of business, maybe manufacturing, for instance, and you have to source your raw materials, so you would need people who would convey, maybe truck drivers who convey the raw materials from one point, from those who are supplying the raw materials to the point that they will be needed, maybe warehoused for a while or straight onto the manufacturing facility. And then after the other materials that you need for production, you need those also to come together. And then at the end of the day, when you're done with production, who are you supplying to? You need to know them. You need to know the quantity that they need. You need to know what time they need these things. And so you need all of these persons, the truck drivers, the dispatch riders, and other persons who are into the logistics business, maybe like those who are into freight, to help you move these things, and then they get to the right destination. But the challenge sometimes for logistics business is when you're handling items that are perishable, given the nature of the delivery destination. Maybe the roads are bad, and then you have to get it in a certain time to ensure that they stay in the right condition.
Okay.
Let's get on to now our guests who will give us in-depth analysis of the trend and also the economic benefits of having a good supply chain management. Hello, can you hear us now?
Yeah, good morning. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
All right. Mr. Demola Philip.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, good to have you join us on the show today. Logistics, supply chain management. If you were not into business and you're not well informed, these words sound a bit abstract. Can you please explain in simple terms what logistics means and probably what supply chain management implies in a way a layman out there can understand?
Hello?
I can hear you. You are muted again. My question, sir, is what do we mean by logistics and what do we mean by supply chain management in layman's parlance?
Okay, good morning. Thank you for having me on your show. Okay, you can hear me now. Good morning. Yes. Thank you for having me on your show. It's a privilege, and I'm not.
Go on, sir. We can hear you. Go on. Mr. Philip. Okay, we seem to still be having some issues with this audio there. Yes, a blessing you were saying.
Yes, we're looking at the other businesses that are connected to the supply chain management, logistics, and you mentioned that we have the truck drivers, we have the dispatch riders, we have those who are into freight who are also helping to ensure that every item, every part of the value chain is not missing out. They get what they need at the right time.
Okay, yeah, that is sure, because a lot of businesses have actually sprung up because of the value attached to the logistics business. Okay, Mr. Demola is back. Good morning once again. I was asking earlier, if you can hear me, that you quickly explain what we mean by logistics and what supply chain management means in layman's parlance.
Okay, so as simple as it can be defined, logistics has to do with
We can hear you. Go ahead. Okay, when we look at supply chain management, because I did mention earlier that logistics is just a subset of supply chain management. There are about 5 processes involved in supply chain management. We talk about planning, we talk about sourcing, you talk about manufacturing, we talk about delivering and returning, because it's an end-to-end exercise. Yes, when you talk about supply chain management. Logistics, on the other hand, is just meant to take care of the movement of resources or finished products. But then there comes the need for you to plan ahead. Companies or businesses must look ahead, take inventory, look at their inventory and see, okay, in the next 3 months, how much of these raw materials would we be needing? Where are we? What's our rate of depletion of the resources that we have? And you begin to plan ahead. Because if you don't plan ahead, the market may be volatile. You may not be able to meet the demand. And in business, once you break any part of the chain, it cascades to others. So it's a whole lot of technical issues, and it's a field of study on its own, talking about supply chain management.
Yes, that's why I said that these days companies are beginning to be intentional about supply chain management, not something you just do at the whim of the hand. Maybe at the time you need a particular thing, you send some persons go get it. So it has to be properly planned. You also, if you are someone, or if you're a company who's into supply of materials, you also need to be able to do demand forecasting, be able to predict the quantity that your customers will need, and so that you make provision for them ahead of time. So these things are very important. You plan, and then you ensure that for facilities that you will need, maybe equipment, the capacity, you need to ensure that you have all of that ready ahead of time, because no part of the chain can be broken. When you do that, it doesn't work. And then you find that the last part of it, which talked about return, some companies just end at delivery. They do not think about the return aspect. And so if you do not complete the chain, it doesn't make your customer satisfied at the end of the day. So let's get back now to our guest. Hello. Okay. So.
Hello, good morning.
Okay. You were trying to explain the other time before the network probably truncated your audio. You were trying to explain what logistics means in layman's parlance and what supply chain management means. Maybe you can return to that and we start from there.
Please move, please. Okay, good morning. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, sorry about the distractions.
So go ahead, sir.
Yeah.
Can you still hear me? My question is, how do you define logistics to a layman out there? And how do you define supply chain management, and probably differentiate the two to a layman out there?
Okay, so what that means is it has to do with the efficient and effective cost management of delivering goods to the... Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Continue, sir. Okay, I guess we'll just go on, sir.
Okay, so logistics has to...
There seems to be a delay at your end. Okay, we'll go on a short break now. And when we come back, we'll return to that conversation.
Okay, so it has to do with the effective and efficient management cost in delivering goods to the customer. That's for logistics. That's logistics. And then supply chain management. Yes.
Okay, I'd like us to go on a very short break now. When we come back, we will return to that call if possible. Otherwise, maybe one of our in-house analysts can, do justice to that. Please stay tuned, don't go away. It happens, and we'll overcome it. Thank you.
All right, thanks for staying tuned. We're still talking about logistics and supply chain management. And we still have in the studio with us Director, Policy and Research, African Development Studies Center, ADSC, Idausa Osamanze. All right, sir. In ensuring that ensuring the flow of goods and services in within a company or even outside the company, what are the issues that could come up with it?
Of course, I was asking earlier on the differences between logistics and supply chain management. Now, logistics, you speak about the movement of people and goods from one place to another. But here in supply chain management, you are looking at the entire process from where the raw material is coming from to who receive the goods at the end of the day in production. So there's a whole lot that is involved. And so the concept of supply management is to see how we can oversee the entire process such that the possibility of delay are eliminated. Take, for example, if you're going to manufacture chairs, for example, you have series of suppliers in the chain. Somebody is cutting the wood in the farm. Some people are sawing the wood. And then some people are stocking it. Then, of course, you need a vehicle to convey it to where it will be converted to furniture. Now you have somebody who also a warehouse where you have to keep the furniture before prospective buyer will come. And he will need a vehicle or logistics company to move it to the final place where the consumer is. Now, the job of the supply chain manager is to be sure that this entire process is seamless in terms of operation. Now, if you give an order, for example, for a furniture, and the person is giving you, the company is telling you in 2 weeks, you will have your furniture delivered. But realize that it's not the one who is cutting the wood in the bush. Now, so the work of the supply chain manager is to actually see beyond his own immediate supplier to second and third tier suppliers and be sure that nothing go wrong with those people. Even when he does not necessarily have control over those suppliers, he must be able to tidy up with his immediate supplier to be sure that where the thing is coming from, that there's certainty that these things will come. So in supply chain, the core is actually risk management to ensure that nothing goes wrong, that when people place order for a good and they are delivered timely.
Okay, from what you said so far, supply chain management seems to be a complex interplay of different variables. It's a process and it demands a level of skill that is not a pedestrian level, so to speak.
Oh, yes.
Okay, we'll come back to you. Let us try if we can still secure connection with our Zoom guest. Mr. Demola, please, I'd like you to confirm to me because we do want to have your take really on this issue. Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me, sir? Can you hear me, Mr. Demola? Please unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm back now. I can hear you.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yes, I can hear you.
The question I asked you earlier has been answered by one of our in-house analysts here. But then, let me ask you about the challenges of supply chain management, because it's a whole lot of processes to manage supply chain. Tell us about the challenges of supply chain management.
Okay. Okay.
Please
so
go on.
basically, sorry for the whole disruption. I guess it has to do with the system as well, network. To answer that question, there are a lot of challenges that have to do with supply chain today, especially from what has happened during the pandemic. Since after the pandemic, it's been quite very, very difficult for a lot of organizations and businesses, and the challenges a lot of organizations face today in terms of supply chain. If you have to look at it from the aspect or perspective of our own space here in Nigeria, you'll see that there are a lot of challenges in terms of structure. Infrastructure, which has been a big problem for logistics, movement of goods and from one place to the other. And then also, you need to also look at it, the challenges coming from the ports. Looking at exportation, importation in Nigeria, it's always a major problem. We have so much of corruption. We have goods lined up at the ports, and it takes so long for you to get them out from there. And then in terms of movement, even on the road, transport from one state to the other, you see it different over time with terrorism, which we've had with bandits, and so many other problems, that affects movement of goods and services, which is what supply chain management is all about. Getting the goods from producer to warehousing, and then to the retailers, and then to the consumer. That has not been able to work here for us business people in Nigeria. And if you also look at some government policies, I give a typical example of my industry, where tariffs are increased by the day, and you have to think of how to replace the goods that you've bought after selling them. So replacement cost becomes a problem. So basically, supply chain management in Nigeria, yes, is one of the very fast growing in terms of the businesses you have in Nigeria. But a lot of the problems I just mentioned are just some of the ones that we're facing. You have also challenges with even labor, where you have protests coming from those even at the ports because of the ways they're being treated in getting their goods or added tariffs to goods that they've already projected, and they're placed on margins that this is what they're going to make. But because of the policies that comes up, and these prices are duties are cost tariffs are changed, it also causes a lot of problems whereby you have reduced margin, and of course by the time the goods get to the final consumer, it becomes even more expensive. So basically, the current challenges that we are still in, looking at fuel situation in Nigeria, you can't even move goods from one place to the other now because the price of fuel has gone up. It's a big challenge right now for a lot of businesses. And when you start increasing the prices of those goods, you discover that demand will reduce.
All right, let's look at
right now.
the
of course, we know
latest
that
trends.
The spending.
Let's look at the latest trends in
well.
logistics and supply chain management. What are they? What are the latest trends in logistics and supply chain management?
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Okay, so you look at the latest trends now.
Go ahead. Okay, we seem to have a challenge there with network, but the logistics and supply chain management is not quite new, even though it's now being done in a different way and more intentional way. But what are some of the latest trends that you've seen with it?
Yeah, but I think what is the trend in this direction at the moment is that now we're having government, national government, actually now being interested in that sector that was almost always dominated by private sector. Sometime last year, because of the impact of the disruption caused in the logistic and supply chain in the flow of goods arising from the COVID-19 pandemic, where, for example, fleet owners, container owners had to increase the price. Even the President of America, Joe Biden, had to cry out because of the massive gain that the shipping companies and the owners of the container were making in the midst of the economic woes. So government has also been coming to see how do we oversight these things so that the burden, you see, because one of the things that a lot of people really don't realize that the prices of goods that are driving crazy, they are as a result of the disruption in the supply chain management and logistics across the globe. So containers owner determine who they give container to and the price at which they get it. And don't forget that, of course, every private businessman wants to make so much money. Now, government also is working on serious road infrastructure so that it can drive down the prices of goods. Take, for example, a container load that is coming here before 4,000, today is about 12,000. So if you factor into the price, of course, definitely it drives prices up and you see inflation going. So there's no way you can talk about even managing your macroeconomic indicators without putting an eye on supply chain management, because you are looking at it and say, what are the things that are likely to go wrong? For example, warehousing facilities, which is part of logistics. And if you don't have warehouse, what do you find? You will see that if they are perishable goods, you can't store them. There are no cold storage facilities. So these are a lot of issues. Take just for example, some years ago, the whole metro system in the UK shut down just because the company did not stock an item which was very critical to the operation of the metro, which was costing only £25. So these are issues, and that's why there's a whole lot of emphasis, both from the private and government sector, in seeing that this supply chain is actually being entrenched and established. So now it's even a profession. So before you used to talk about purchasing supply, now you talk about procurement, but people have moved above that now to even managing the value in the supply chain and see how we can actually derive value in terms of driving down costs of doing business.
Yes, I think it's already the time for us to take it as a profession. I mean, even beyond now, because before the COVID-19 lockdown, the world was never prepared for a total shutdown of the world.
Yeah.
When supply chain managers talk about, okay, predictive risk management,
yes,
it's always in the context of, okay, if my supply from country A is disrupted, I have countries B, C, D, and E.
Okay, yes.
But then, COVID happened and all of us were locked down.
Yes.
Now, it was a new problem for the entire world. They couldn't fathom it, but nobody saw it coming. So one of the latest trends to answer your question now is that people are now planning for global shutdown. What happens if there's global shutdown? Again, we are not praying for any pandemic, but if this one happened, anything else could shut down the world. Now, supply chain managers are now looking closely at global predictive risk management in case anything else happens, which is a good step in the right direction, right?
Yes, a good step in the right direction, and it's a door opener for other businesses, because when that happened, that's when you began to see the influx of dispatch riders. Before that time, you didn't see much of them, and different arms of logistics began to open.
Yeah, but you have to have the goods in stock for you to have somebody who is dispatching, so which is real fundamental, because it is this ability to ensure that what you need that are critical to your operation are in stock, so that you are not stalled in terms of producing the goods and services that your clients or your customers will be needing.
Okay, all right. I think we've actually spent the time allotted to this particular segment. No thanks to technology, it's one of those things that we will overcome one very, very soon. Okay, so let's take a very short break now, and when we return, we'll be talking about working mothers who are also nursing mothers. What are the challenges? And we'll be back.
Policies are the framework for development. The roles sound policies play in ensuring good governance cannot be overemphasized. And so now we'll look at policy and good governance. This is your key area. It also, someone say, as Director Policy and Research. How should policies be made? What is the first step to take in making a policy in any area?
Well, when you talk about policy or public policy, as is usually said, is that you're attempting to solve a problem. So the first step is to, first of all, even identify what the troubles are. So you have to know what the troubles are. Then, of course, before you now begin to think what should be done to address those troubles. Policy, there are sets of principles, actions or decisions that guides what government do. In short, the things that government should do and the things that government should not do. So, for you to be able to arrive at that decision, which is, of course, had to be very scientific, you have to understand what the background is, what the problems are, or what the challenges are likely to be, because policies are supposed to be very proactive, not reactive. So you are looking at what problems that are not existing, and you are thinking them to exist, and setting up principles and framework to address those challenges, should they arise.
Okay, one would assume that once you have a very solid or a very sound policy document, then governance should be, maybe not easy, should be hugely successful. But governments still fail, even in spite of having very robust and high-sounding policy documents. Why this disconnect?
Well, you see, in policy studies, there are what they call habits of people. And these habits centers around one, knowledge, skills, and then, of course, desire. Now, knowledge is knowing what to do. So when you talk about policy, you have people, you write it on paper. People know what to do. Another thing is, do they know how to do it? Which is the skills or the skills required to do what must be done. And then the third leg in the triangle is that it's just sufficient motivation to actually do what is right. Now, it is the gap between these three legs on this stool that makes sometimes policies to fail. So you may have a very good document right there. For example, when the 63 education policy was implemented in Nigeria, the document was beautiful, the legal backing came, and then, of course, government went ahead, make procurement of equipment. But unfortunately, you didn't have people with the skill set to use those equipments. So they ended up in the hands of vendors. And up to now, we have really not been able to actualize the real purpose for the 633-4 policy. This is the gap between knowing what to do and how to do it.
Now, in formulating policies, what are the things to consider? You talked about knowing what to do and how to do it. We find that sometimes certain policies are made and people were thinking, oh, that should not have been the policy made because it's not the urgent need at that time, or it's not what is needed. So how do we bridge the gap? How does government bridge the gap to ensure that the policies made are the ones to be made at the time?
Well, I think the real challenge in our world today, like we always say, there's always a two sides to the coin, and some people are saying there's also a third side to the coin. Now, there are a lot of things that drives policy. Critical to this is value system. Now, what are the defining elements in your value, your ideologies, and your philosophies? Now, these are very critical in terms of policy. And that's why, for example, if you look at what's happening around the removal of fuel subsidy, it's because people belong to different ideological blocks. those who believe that, of course, government intervention is necessary for society to grow, and those who believe that the market forces should determine the growth in the market. These two forces are fighting each other. And that's why you can see Labour is talking about going on strike. Because they are having two different values. So what really happens is that many people don't prepare to manage change. If you just take, for example, Qatar's A stage of change management, it will help you to think through the process of making policy work so that you can actually harmonize the viewpoints of different people. It starts by having to create what Qatar calls a sense of urgency. If we don't do this, we will all die. That's very important. That's the first level. Now, once you can create that sense of urgency that is needed, then, of course, that's where you find buy-in, even when there are ideological differences. Now, of course, you also need to set up a guiding coalition. In other words, put a team together who will be able to be the advocate for this policy. Create a compelling vision. That's the third phase of this in this process. Now, you create a compelling vision to be able to say in clear terms, this is what the outcome of this policy is going to be. And then communicate that same vision to the people in very clear terms. And then, of course, empower people who will drive this vision. So, once you follow this 8-step process, you see you can get a large buy-in of people. And this gap between what people think, you can reduce the drag a little bit.
Okay, let's look at policy implementation now. The way you spoke about it, policy implementation is not just a one-day process.
Yes.
A lot of steps in between. You mentioned just 8 to have buy-in and so on and so forth. But then, per time, there is always this friction for governments between meeting the immediate needs of the people they are governing. Nigeria is a case study now, and addressing long-term policy issues that the country needs also for survival. How does a government strike a balance between putting out immediate fires and at the same time taking a long, deep into the future and still?
Yeah, but I think one of the things that we can actually look at in that area is that where you have a national vision, for example, the state has where they are going to, and then they are working toward that goal very seriously. For example, if you were looking at the conversation at the screening yesterday, you would have heard that one of the nominees was saying, oh, we are doing this because we know that there are some pains, but there's a gain in the front. So if you have a vision, which is what Qatar calls the compelling vision, you see, this is where we are going. So we are expecting you to be able to make sacrifices today because of where we are going. Now, it's not enough to tell people to make sacrifices. You have to lead from the front.
Okay.
And this is the disconnect that we actually have between public policy and implementation. So, if the leader says, oh, this is where we are going, and is not ready to lead from the front, by way of demonstrating by the things he do, the things he say, toward that goal, you can find buy-in from behind. Now, another issue is, you see, especially in public service, most agencies work in silos. And you see that also even in corporate bodies, where every department is trying to do its own. Everybody is claiming a territory. Now, when you have people working in silos, then of course you don't find congruence the synergy that should exist between agencies to say we are all working toward one purpose. Take, for example, Nigeria says, oh, we want a GDP growth at 6%. That's the president's vision. Now, what role will FRS play? What role will custom play? What role will immigration play? Because all we are thinking that we want to get to that point where we can get 6% of GDP growth. Now, what you will see, custom is struggling to impress the president. Immigration is struggling to impress the president. FRSC is struggling to impress the president. FRS is struggling to impress the president. Everybody is impressing the president with their own score. Customs say, oh, we raised 3 trillion. FRS say, oh, we raised 200 billion. But now that's killing business and dragging the GDP down. And that's why they say team is an acronym. Together, every one of us, we will achieve more. That's what team is. So if we're not working together in synergy, it is always very difficult to actually see implementation through. But in the third world, another factor that's also hampering implementation is the fact that many people also don't believe in the states.
Yeah, that's true. That's critical.
So the commitment to the primordial is more in this regard. What do I mean by this? People can steal from the state to use to develop their community. But it's abomination to steal from the community for the purpose of the state. So which means people still have allegiances to their primordial settings than to the state. And so because they don't see the state as their own, people are always thinking of what to pull out from the state. So even when they have the right skills or the knowledge or the motivation to do, but because of their primordial sentiments, they will still defraud the state. And this is why implementation sometimes also fail.
We find sometimes that continuity is a problem in governance. So what mechanism can be put in place to ensure policy continuity?
Yeah, well, again, in politics, like they say, every politician thinks about the next election. Only statesman thinks about the next generation. So this, of course, you have to see going. But you see, when we have a national vision that all of us collectively agree to say, this is where we are going. These are the values that drives what we do. This is our own ideological understanding. Now, people can walk around to say what is good, what is for the common good, then you can protect it. But until you get to that level of that conversation, which of course is actually also missing in the public space, which is stakeholders' engagement. Because governance is not just about doing things. It's about doing things responsibly. It's about doing things transparently. And it's about being accountable to the people. That the people take a stake in whatever thing that you're doing. So if people have a stake in what you are doing, they can protect it. That's where public opinion, pressure group, forces government to stay online. I remember some years ago, and I think it was in the early 2000s, this conversation was going on in America, and then of course young people were coming into politics, Gore was making promises, Clinton was making promises, and then they asked one old American president, there's so much promise to the American people. And the man said something very simple, and he said, talk is very cheap. If they get to the White House will bend them. Which means there's sufficient institutionalization in that system that it is difficult for one politician to come and change the rule. So this is why people are advocating for strong institutions and processes that are clear enough and simple enough to make things work. So if you don't have good structures in place, of course, you can't talk about consistency.
Okay, so let's look at the phrase sound policy itself? Because that was the beginning of the talk, sound policy and governance. Now, what are the key indicators of a sound policy? I know it varies from maybe from country to country, but then there should be something we should look out for as individuals. But when government presents us with a policy paper, we should interact with it from the point of information. What are the key indicators of a sound policy for the government?
We may not look for too many indicators. It's to see that that policy is for the public good, for the good of the majority of the people. So when you're saying a foreign policy is sound, you are saying that the outcome of that policy is going to benefit the generality, if not everybody, but a huge majority of the people that are affected. So to that extent, you say that policy is sound because everybody may not benefit equally. So it's a policy that is even to mediate between the strong and the weak and find a middle ground for both, that this person is making some gain and this person is making some gains, and no, it's not a kind of a zero-sum game. Winner takes all. It's a no zero-sum game. You lose some, I lose some. You gain some, I gain some.
Oh, okay.
What role should experts and even civil society organizations, even the media, play in shaping policies? Media
is very powerful instrument in terms of determining the direction of public policy, and the civil society also. And that's why when you go to the US, you see media is big business. Lobbying is a big business. Because civil society groups and media try to shape and change the direction of public policy in line with their own ideology. Because there's nobody who operates in an ideological blank or vacuum. Everybody sure have an ideology which they believe in. Now, if yours is populist ideology and that's what you are promoting, chances are that you are going to turn people's eye toward that direction. So media plays a very key role in public policy shaping. And therefore, those who are the formulators of public policy, or those who want to implement public policy, can only joke with the media at their own peril. Because they can make or mar the success of the public policy.
Okay, you just answered one part of the question. She asked about civil society groups as well.
Yeah, of course. Same. Civil society groups, these are interest groups.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, they have interest, and they are pushing their interest, and they use various means to push their interest. Now, once those opinion is aggregated, like they say, the political system is a system because you have input, processed, and come out as output. But in between, there are gatekeepers that sift what comes into the system. Otherwise, if it is not properly processed, it creates a lag in the system, and that lag they call either demand stress or support stress. Now, what that means is that it's either people are putting more demand on the system, which makes it break down, or people are withdrawing support from the system. So, if you also don't engage civil society very well, when you are making your public policy, you will find that you could find a support stress or demand stress, which will create a lag in the working of the system.
Okay, in discussions about policy among the very informed on this issue, they talk about policy fragmentation and the ills of it. What is it, and how can it be curbed?
Well, when you say you're fragmenting policy, you see, you're having a policy that's not coordinated. And if your policies are not coordinated, like I say, you'll find agencies, ministries, departments are working in silos.
Okay.
So that's what I'm saying. Now, but it's to see that this is where leadership really comes to bear. And I was so very happy when, of course, the current regime were setting up his own kitchen cabinet. He had a special advisor on policy coordination. Now, what's the role of this? Is to interfere and interface with various agencies, various ministries, various departments to say, this is where government is going. And if what one agency is doing is going to be at cross purpose with what another agency or department is going to do, then this person could be able to brief the president to say, look, if we go this route, we will not achieve our goal. And this is the real reason why you find that some of the executive orders that the current president signed were to suspend some action taken by some agency, because if the goal is to actually create an environment where doing business becomes very easy, and you are raising taxes and you are imposing new ones, then of course you defeat that goal. That's what it is. So the coordination is to say that we are not operating in silos. Everything is working together, and we see that we are all facing one direction and we are working at it.
Usually when policies are made, the public are called to ensure that there is implementation of the policies. But what about the policy makers themselves? How can government evaluate the impact of policies to either sustain them or to make a better one?
Well, I think for every policy making process, the last phase is always monitoring and evaluation. The government is saying what is the impact and the outcome of the policy on the people. And that's why I said the polity is a system. You have it wired that there is input coming to processing unit, then it comes out and output. That becomes a feedback into the system as a new policy. In other words, if you have made a policy and it's not working well, then you look at the reason why it didn't work. And if you find out the reason why this policy is not working, then of course you have to reevaluate. And that's why you see people talk about these days SMART goals. SMART being for your goal or direction of your policy should be something that is simple enough, something that is measurable, something that is achievable, something that is realistic, something that is time-bound. And of course, there's also a room for evaluation. And when you evaluate, you can either readjust or you can reward, which is the last R. When it says smarter goals. Okay. So you can either, when you finish evaluation, it's either you readjust the policy to meet the gap, or you reward performance that, look, we have done well, thumb up for everybody. Now, so once you make your policy smart or smarter, you must understand that you have to program into it that in implementation, you're saying that people are doing what they should do. That's monitoring. Then, after the project is ended, then you find out, did we achieve our goals? And if not, what were the constraints? And then you make new policies to address those constraints. So if there are human constraints, which means, of course, you will need people with capacity, people with ability and special skill, then, of course, you have to incorporate them to ensure that you drive your policy to success.
Okay, in your earlier submission on this issue of politics, you spoke about owning it, making sure that people own it.
Yes.
But at the formulation level of policy, you realize that we can't have all of us together, come with the policy together. A set of brilliant minds come into a particular place and they decide for the rest of us. Now, some feel alienated. When I say some, the people down there, the citizens, the masses feel, okay, where did they put us when they were having this particular policy construct in mind? How do we ensure the citizenship ownership of policy documents before they even become the document in the first place?
Yeah, but that's what we talked about, we call stakeholders engagement, which is very important because the policy is not for you, it's for people who are going to achieve it. So you must engage your stakeholder at different levels. Now, what people do in the advanced climb is first and foremost to also look at it. If you have a policy option, you subject it to some polling or debate. Some institutions call for public hearing, where actually people are made to come make presentation physically to the body that is responsible in formulating that kind of policy. But what you see, especially in the third world, is that once those announcements are made, people really don't feel concerned. They only start to react when eventually the policy comes into effect. So that's a problem. Now, once they say there are public hearing, it's public hearing that anybody can walk in So most of the time, you see, before any policy is written, the agency or the department, even if it's the law, the National Assembly driving their own act, we call for public hearing. And they say in the next 2 weeks, we are waiting for public to come and make input into what we are doing. But most of the time, the citizens really do not pay attention to some of all those things. So it's only when the policy is now put in place without their input that people start to complain. So stakeholder engagement is important, and it's an important segment of policy formulation and implementation. So at every stage, it's not even at the formulation stage, even during implementation, you need to engage stakeholders. I give you one very funny joke.
Okay.
Some years ago, a certain government in the north part of this country saw that water was a problem to a particular community, and they decided to sink a borehole in the community. They put the water on, and then they sabotaged the borehole. Stop running. And everybody was wondering, why is this thing spoiling? They fix it today, they spoil it tomorrow. They fix it today, they spoil it tomorrow. And then, of course, they decided to engage with people. And say, this thing keeps spoiling. What's really happening? And they were asking people, are you not enjoying the water? And it was shocking for women to actually say that they were not enjoying the water, because the conversation they usually have when they are going to the stream to fetch water has been taken away by the borehole.
Goodness. Oh,
so this is the real importance of stakeholder engagement, to even know whether that's what they want. Because the women, they don't have time to talk together, except that they are going to the stream in the morning to go and fetch water. So now you have brought tap water into the main. So where would they be having their conversation? So these are some of the things that, of course, we need to do to be able to carry everybody along, to see that there's a buy-in into what government or an agency wants to do. And then we will now start implementation. Otherwise, some people come and say, oh, this is not what we want. And then they stall the whole process.
In looking at other countries, international countries, and the way policies are formulated, implemented, and then even monitored, what are the lessons that Nigeria can learn from and also begin to apply locally?
Well, I think in all these things, is leadership for me is very, very important. When you see countries succeed, what you have is that you have a very great leader. And that's what you have seen all through history. Just mention a state that has done well. You'll see somebody who is sitting down there and is saying, this is where we want to go. And then, of course, you have an informed citizenry. You know, like Kennedy wake up in May of 1963 and said, America, by the end of this decade, should be able to land a man on the moon and bring the man down safely. That was the national vision, and it was given to NASA. And then NASA were working at it. And when the press eventually came to engage with those who were working in NASA, and they asked one cleaner, what are you doing here? And the lady said, we are trying to put a man on the moon and bring the man down safely. In other words, he had a very clear vision of what they were doing. That even how he was cleaning the floor was also part and parcel of that vision, because it was communicated compellingly by the leader. And they knew that this is what the government wants, this is where our leader wants us to go, all of us want to go there. And you see that in Lee Kuan Yew also. When he says to the Singaporean, we are at a crossroad, we have to take a decision. Do we all die together? Or do we all stay alive together? What do you want? And the people say, we want to stay alive. And then said, allow me to drive and steer the ship of state. And they gave him the support. And for 33 years, he was able to transform Singapore from a third world that was rejected by Malaysia to become one of the first world, rich in everything. Because you have a leader with clear vision of where you want to go, and it was communicating and reaching out to people. Because you cannot ignore clear communication. People want to hear from the leader. They are passing through pain because every policy comes with pains. Because it's a change. There's going to be lifestyle change. And people need to be assured that there's a tomorrow. And that's what is missing most of the time in the third world. The main policy pronouncement, you don't go back to tell the people that we are on course, so this is what we have been able to achieve in the last 3 days. That's why you saw the address of the president. He said, look, in 2 months,
2 months,
we have saved
over 1 trillion naira.
Almost 1 trillion. We have saved almost 1 trillion. They don't have been either a debt to government or a waste somehow. But government has saved itself because it has taken this decision. We know that you are passing through pain. Our goal here is to ensure that we help everybody not to create hurt. It's painful in the immediate. Tomorrow will be good. So you should be able to show people the low-hanging fruits that they can easily get from this. And when you make some milestone, celebrate it a little, let people see that at least we are moving somewhere. But when you keep mute, and you are not talking, and you are not relating with people, and you are not even telling people what has gone wrong in terms of implementation, or why work is stalled, you will find agitation everywhere. And this is the real issues that we must learn. Now, if anything is happening in the advanced world, they get the people informed, they tell them they are up and doing. The press secretary, the assistants, they are talking, they are releasing press releases to assure the people that we are on course, we are passing through some challenges. This is what we are facing at the moment. This is what we are doing to overcome it, and we are sure that our target date will meet it. Now, all these things serve as a motivation for the people to support whatever thing the public policy maker is doing.
So essentially, there is no fail-safe policy document, so to speak, in a contest. That is why constant monitoring and constant evaluation, comes to bear, like you said. Or is there a fail-safe policy document anywhere in the world?
You see, what it is depending on what goal you are pursuing at the time. Take, for example, when you have fiscal monetary policy that is targeted, for example, at growth, what do? You reduce taxes so that corporations can grow. Now, what happens if corporations have made so much money? You cause inflation. So what do? You reverse the policy and increase more taxes to take money away from the society.
Okay.
So there's no one policy that you say is foolproof, that you put this policy in place and they are not subject to change. Because policies are supposed to be addressing a particular issue. But understand that in the course of addressing a particular issue, you are also on the path of creating another trouble.
That's very vital, very critical.
So you must work hard to see how to monitor and ensure that the trouble that you are creating, you also find a solution to deal with them.
Now, why policies are made, sometimes we find in a society where corruption is prevalent, as good as the policy may look on paper, but it doesn't turn out well in the course of implementation. So how does corruption hinder the effectiveness of policies, and how can it be checked?
Well, of course, no matter how good a policy is, and if you put men in place, they will, that are, of course, have low value system, definitely that policy won't work. Somebody make a joke. When Nelson Mandela came and became the president of South Africa in the early 2000s, he came to Nigeria to take our own document. The same constitution that we are all complaining here. And Nelson Mandela ran in for 4 years before they started the process of amending it. And for that 4 years, we all attest to the leadership potential of Nelson Mandela, that the problem was really not with the document, the problem was really with people. But I think what people are doing globally is to reduce human intervention in this process, to limit it as much as possible. So in most of the advanced society, people are deploying humanoids, robotics, artificial intelligence to see how we can reduce human intervention in terms of implementation of some of these policies so that they can become more effective. Because you can't bribe a robot, you can't settle a robot. But if a human being is there, it's possible to settle, or you can bribe that person out.
Thank you very much. Idausa Osaman, Director of Policy and Research. I emphasized policy for a reason. We've had a very robust discussion in this segment of this show. All right, let's go over to Austin Okere for some business nuggets. Then we will be back in the studio to look at another issue entirely. Please stay.
If you still insist that despite the competent people that are available to run the business after you have exited, it has to be your son or your brother or your sister, then that's where the problem is, because it's going to destroy value in the company, it's going to affect the value of your shares and returns. In that case, then it's better to put someone who has a passion for the business. In one of the Business Highlights series, I had clearly said that the company is not owned by anybody. People just have a holding in the shares of the company, and that's why they are called shareholders. Nobody is an owner of the company. The company has a life of its own, and because it's innate, this life is lived through the actions of a director. I went on to say that a company is not a kingdom that someone should then keep and insist that his son or his brother or sister should run it or inherit it. And I think there is a need for clarification to say, therefore, no son should inherit a business that his father founded. And I don't think that's the point. I think the point is that some companies are called that name just to emphasize that. Take a company called Jacob and Sons. Jacob and Sons is clearly signaling that this business is a family business, and that from the father it will go to the sons. Maybe the sons are already in the business working it with the dad. I think the issue is that just like Caesar's wife, the son that is going to come in must tick all the boxes. First, he must be passionate. Secondly, he must be competent. And thirdly, of course, he must have character, integrity, just like if you were going to hire an outside person. I've seen a lot of businesses, whether it's law chambers or consultancy firms or IT businesses, that the son have clearly not indicated any passion, but because of pressure feel compelled to go and inherit the business and run it. And more often than not, eventually it dies a slow and painful death. So we're not saying that a son cannot inherit a business that his father started. What we're saying is that it is not mandatory. And if the son should, then he should tick all the boxes. More so as a son, he needs to prove himself even more to be convincing.
Welcome back to Early Exchange on Souq News. Okay, Okay, that was a very robust discussion about policy. Then, Austin Okere was talking about sons, taking ownership of their father's businesses. Well, he just said that it is not a must. It's not a crime, first and foremost, for a father to hand over or to pass the baton of business to his son. But the son must have requisite, qualification. He must be able to handle the business. Otherwise, it will fail. And that is why we have a lot of local businesses that don't surpass the founders, because most times there is this sentimental attachment to passing down the baton to your child when you know that by default or by nature your child is not probably configured to be able to run it. It is a lot to run a business, but then that is that. Okay, this week is World Breastfeeding Week. And mothers all over the world, especially nursing mothers or those who have passed through that particular stage, will say it's a week that is very welcome, because the challenges of motherhood, especially when you have an infant that is still sucking, cannot be overemphasized. You get to see that most workplaces don't even factor in the fact that you are breastfeeding at some point, and they don't factor in that, and the pressures on the mother are very, very huge. Okay, but let us have a short report that sets the tone for that conversation. Then when we're back, we will have that in-house talk about the challenges of being a working mother and a nursing mother at the same time. Please, let's watch the report.
Breast milk, which offers numerous health benefits for infants, is considered the safest and cleanest food at that very early phase in life. It contains essential antibodies that help protect babies against common childhood illnesses. The World Health Organization recommends 6 months exclusive breastfeeding for infants. However, the same organization reported that less than half of children given birth to at any point in time are exclusively breastfed, indicating a potential missed opportunity for improving child health. August 1st to 7th has been set aside to observe World Breastfeeding Week to advocate essential rights for mothers and children. And this year's theme, Let's Make Breastfeeding and Work, expresses the need for inclusiveness of nursing mothers in their workplace, creating an environment where their duty as a parent coupled with their obligations in their workplace work simultaneously. According to research, more than 500 million working women are deprived of essential maternity protections in national laws, while only 20% of countries require employers to provide employees with paid breaks and facilities for breastfeeding or expressing milk. These are the narratives leading to this year's theme. This gap leaves quite a number of nursing mothers to opt for alternative food for their babies during working period instead of breast milk. While exclusive breastfeeding is preached by pediatricians and health organizations, balancing maternal duties and corporate activities can work. Grace Komalafe, Souq News.
All right, thank you, Grace, for the report on breastfeeding. Now, we're in Breastfeeding Week because every 1st to 7th of August is observed globally as World Breastfeeding Week. Now, the focus this year is on enabling or creating an environment that enables nursing mothers to work and also breastfeed their babies. I know that in a lot of organizations, working mothers are given maternity leave, but after the maternity leave, what happens? That's where a lot of nursing mothers usually have challenges. There are several methods that have been introduced to enable working mothers also breastfeed their children, but some of them, like the extraction method, is something that some mothers are not very comfortable with. Let's also have in mind that you need to keep it at a particular temperature, or the extracted milk at a particular temperature, so that it can also be given to the baby when needed. For mothers who have support, so they leave their babies at home or they leave them at a care center. But some organizations are looking at the possibility of having working mothers bring their babies, maybe have like a creche sited within the work premises, so mothers can at time intermittently go over to nurse their babies, and then return to work?
If you have not been there, you really can't understand how it works. The question is, have I been there? Maybe by observation, I have been there, not by direct participation, so to speak. One major reason, or one major cause of what they call postpartum depression in nursing mothers is this challenge of, coping with the demands of being a mom that is still breastfeeding a child and still working at full, or what they call optimum capacity. It is very, very demanding, and it tells on their health and even on their mental balance. Now, when I first read about this World Breastfeeding Week, the first question is, why week? Because we've had days in the last couple of weeks. What day of this? What day of this? But why do we have breastfeeding having a whole week, 7 days? I guess it just underlines the significance of that particular exercise of motherhood in the life of everybody. It has been said in medical parlance that the colostrum, which is that thick yellow thing that the baby first. Yes, don't worry.
That description makes
the thick yellowish fluid that first comes, as in most babies, they need it. Then UN is saying mothers should give their children or their babies 6 months of exclusive breastfeeding. That implies no water, no artificial baby formula or whatever, just breast alone. But then for a working mother in Lagos, for instance, that has to go to work 5 a.m. and probably will not come back until 10 p.m. And if unfortunately the business does not make provision for either an on-site crèche or a breastfeeding room, if there's anything like that, then you begin to wonder, how do I cope? I owe this baby a duty as a mother, and I owe my workplace or my business a duty also. Otherwise, I have to make ends meet. So this is a dilemma that the UN is speaking to. And today they say the theme is, let us make breastfeeding and work.
Yes, making breastfeeding and work. It takes a lot of effort. It takes the collaboration of everyone, not just the mother, because the mother can only try her bit, particularly when you're not self-employed. You don't call the shots as to what time you resume, what time you close, and when you have to be at your workspace. So when you have an infant that is less than a year, having that child within a working environment is challenging. They cry. Babies cry, and you don't want to have a baby maybe at the front desk because of the distraction that it will, the baby will be to the mother. And also, babies, as they play, you need to give them a space for them to just have their own time while they play or while they do other things. So there are certain jobs that by the nature of the job, you can't have the mother with the baby. And even when you have people take care of the baby, like I mentioned, it's challenging handling an infant. Some of them are just so used to their mothers until they grow to an extent that they can be left with other caregivers. It is a problem. So you find that with all of these challenges, some mothers have no option than to turn to the use of baby food, formulas, and the rest. But there has been advocacy in some quarters for the extension of the maternity leave period. Some are saying it should cover the 6 months mandatory, as recommended by health practitioners, that mothers should breastfeed their babies for a period of 6 months. But how many organizations, how many companies can afford to give a female staff 6 months of leave? Now, if you have a female staff who have worked in an organization, say, for 10 years, and maybe she just got married at the time she got a job, and so she wants to have like 3 or 4 children, if she has to take 6 months of leave for every time she has a children, let's say after every 2 years or after 3 years, the amount of time she'll be absent from work. So it's a challenge, really, and how organizations are going to work around this, it's it's something I don't know how it's going to be really possible. But maybe instead of giving 6 months of break, it should be reduced number of hours. Maybe remote work should be made available for nursing mothers, where it's possible for them to have a combination. They work remotely and also on site, so it's like a hybrid job. So instead of staying at work from 5 to 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., the nursing mother can be allowed to close maybe at 1 p.m. or 12 p.m. as the case may be, so that in that space they can just be able to find a way around it.
Okay, whether to give them 6 months off duty or to arrange for some remote possibility, it's a symposium discussion, and we really can't, explore it fully here on this particular show. Now, you mentioned something that speaks to discrimination against nursing mothers, quote unquote. You did not use the words, but I'm just saying it because some employers of labor will not employ you if they realize maybe you're pregnant, or maybe you're just a new way. Not because they mean any harm against you, but they are factoring in the same thing you just spoke about. If you get pregnant now and you get a baby now, 6 months you're off my duty, and I have to pay you.
For now, it is not 6 months. It's still 3 months.
It's 3 months.
4 months.
Okay,
in some,
3 months, 4 months in some organizations. That's fine. I mean, when you do that 3 times within a period of 5 years, it amounts to almost like 9 months out of what I'm meant to enjoy from you as your employer. And they are saying this is some kind of discrimination because the mother essentially is just fulfilling a biological role. We still need to procreate to ensure that there is continuity of life. Then one other issue, especially that is faced by newlyweds, the young ladies who just became mothers. Some places, some work places don't give you that privacy. Now, the idea of bringing out your breast in public, quote unquote, to feed a baby is the first mental stress a young lady faces, because we know that it is called a private part of the body for a particular reason. Now you have a baby you are feeding and the baby is crying. The baby has no issue. He is not bothered about whether it is public place or private place. He just wants to suckle. And now you have of course, but before they get used to that, it's always very challenging. I have seen it happen, but then after a while, especially if you have a very troublesome baby, you will learn to cope.
The baby that would not just
that will not just take a no for an answer, because some babies don't take no for an answer. Then there is fatigue and sleep deprivation for nursing mothers. Babies wake up at midnight to suckle and to cry. Some are very troublesome. They have this talent at waking up midnight, and when they wake up, you as a mom must attend to their needs at that point in time. You must
when you describe it in such manner, it's very funny when you say they have a talent.
Some are talented night criers. It's not. It is configuration.
That is by their the stage they are. They are meant to do these things. It is just natural for them to do these things, and that is why human resource has to structure the work arrangements in such a way that they put some of these things into consideration. Imagine a mother, a nursing mother, who's had to wake up maybe like 2 or 3 times in the course of the night to breastfeed her baby. Asking her to resume at the same time that others who were not breastfeeding, or even male colleagues, sometimes could be a bit insensitive. So these are considerations that should be given to breastfeeding mothers, so that they can attend to their babies, and they can be encouraged to attend to their babies. And then workload too. For the first maybe 1 year or first 8 months of giving birth, a bit of relief should be given to the mother so that she's not overstressed. Taking care of a baby is not easy, especially when the mother is doing exclusive breastfeeding. That means you need to feed the child very often. For those who complement with formulas and other baby food, it's not so tasking, because maybe you can just make the food available and then there's someone who has to feed the baby, or you having to feed the baby. That you can even do at your desk if your office permits that you can have your baby with you while working. But for breastfeeding, like you say, you need to find an exclusive area that you're very comfortable with, or at least go to some place where you can have a level of privacy. Or you can adopt some methods where you're a bit covered while doing that. But these things distract, these things create tension for the mother. So when the workload isn't so much, it further encourages the mother to attend to baby, attend to other things, and also have time to rest, gain composure while attending to other things.
Yes, even when you have a workplace that has maybe a dedicated space for nursing mothers to take care of their babies. Now the question is, at what frequency do you go back to your babies? Now, at this particular stage in the life of babies, they see themselves as extensions of their mothers, not as separate entity. A baby thinks, I am not complete without this madam.
I'm
just messing with that.
Why should
now,
she give me to someone else?
Even if we know that, okay, that particular, the next room there is a crèche or where you have your baby and you're working for me here in this particular room, at every cry, you are prompted by nature to go there and attend to him. And this sometimes doesn't go down well with employers of labor.
The work suffers, no doubt about it. The work suffers. That's why it has to be arranged in some way. But, you know, that's a discouragement too for employers when they're picking people that they want to work for them, or they feel, oh, this one has a lot of baggage, or this person, because of the responsibility that they have. But maybe a little compromise. The employee gives in a little, the employer gives in a little. That compromise can come around remuneration, because for the task you're taking off the nursing mother, for the privileges you're given to the nursing mother, someone has to suffer for it. The person who's covering. So maybe a kind of a balance should be there. You're giving more time, but that will also mean you earn a bit less than what you would normally earn if you have all the time to attend to your duty. So that way, everybody's happy. The organization is not shortchanged. The mother is encouraged to breastfeed, and everyone is happy.
Okay, let's take the focus away from what employers of labor are doing. Let's zone in on the mothers themselves, on the nursing mothers themselves. And the question is, how long should a mother breastfeed a child? UN is, so UNICEF is recommending 2 years, not 2 years exclusive. Don't be scared. 6 months exclusive, then 2 years at a stretch.
Duration.
But what do you find these days? You find young ladies say, you know, I can't do that for 2 years. We heard that in the past, our mothers actually breastfed us for like 3 years, upwards of 3 years. I still see in the neighborhood some little children still running to their grandma to have a taste of the breast, even after they had outgrown, you know, suckling. Now, the question is, for a trendy modern lady that is bothered about configuration, that is bothered about statistics, okay, that is bothered about statistics and the look and yes, let me just say statistics, because I am not allowed to say some things. How long would you, as a person,
okay, that is bothered about her body figure.
A body figure, and then that has this wrong perception about what breastfeeding does to the body, even though it is being said medically that it helps your body, even as a woman. How long should you breastfeed it?
Okay, if you're talking about trending mothers and you're making comparison with mothers of the past generation or the older generation, I think we need to look at the reasons why they breastfed for long before we're talking about how long they breastfed. Okay. Now, breastfeeding was not just for the benefit of the child. Some of them used it also as contraceptive method. Now, how effective that is left for medical practitioners to answer. But there was a thought around that the more you breastfeed, the less likely you are to get pregnant again. And so because a lot of contraceptive methods were not available then, a lot of them keyed into that. So it wasn't just because they wanted to nourish the baby, because at age 2 and 3, children are already eating, at least eating certain foods that can supply them with the nutrients that they need. So that was an angle to it as well. And then 2, you also find that children at that age didn't have the need to be in school. So they were with their mothers often. But these days, at 1, even less than 1, you have children already enrolled in school, whether at crash, pre-nursery, whatever form they will be at that time. So there's a need to detach the child to an extent from the mother. But if you continue breastfeeding, it becomes difficult. How do you keep a child in school and the child needs to breastfeed? So these are some of the reasons why we had prolonged a period of breastfeeding at that time. Now, coming to what you mentioned, modern day mothers being worried about their body figure and not wanting to alter that with prolonged breastfeeding. Well, if you breastfeed for 1 year and you breastfeed for 2 years and you breastfeed for 3 years, I don't think that the changes that will happen with your body will be that significant, because the bottom line is that you breastfed. And with these days, people are doing cosmetic surgery and all of that. There are different ways to enhance your body figure. I think there's less worry about that. It's more of convenience. How convenient is it for you to breastfeed? if you're given graciously maximum 6 months as period of break from work, at the time you resume, after that, it is expected that topmost 1 year, you're fully back into your duties. So how then do you begin to give excuses that you need to breastfeed your baby after 2 years, 3 years? So the implications on day-to-day activities, the implications on work will be so much more. These are some of the reasons why trending mothers, as you put it, want to breastfeed for less period of time, because there are a lot of things that are there are a lot of things that are struggling for the time and the attention of the mother.
Okay.
I would say that work is predominantly the reasons why mothers breastfeed for less, and then school.
Okay, just for the sake of, defending my constituency, my constituency as a man, really, I know there are talks in some places for paternity leave as well, because the first 6 months of life for the child and for the mother as a nursing mother, they're very, very critical. And sometimes a mom needs support. And who else can give a better support if not the father? I mean, it takes two to tango.
Yes.
It takes two to tango. So maybe the authorities, the concerned authorities will look in that direction, that for every maternity leave there should be a corresponding paternity leave.
Yes, the federal
somewhere.
government has already approved paternity leave, but it's not as long as maternity.
Why should it not be as long
because
as?
Because what would you be doing at home as a man
Supporting.
whose wife just had a baby?
Supporting
for
my
a period
wife.
of 3 months. I think the paternity leave is 14 working days. That's for the man, because of the running the rounds it would have to do once the woman delivers, having to also help with the house chores and be that support system, encouraging the woman, because a lot of women go through a lot of emotions once they put to bed. It doesn't really matter if it's the first child or it's the second or the third, as the case may be. So,
Okay.
But beyond that, the man needs to make a living. And what if they both work in the same place? It means that the burden on the job will be so much more.
It
so
is this,
I don't think it should be the same length of time, because
it is
the
the
man doesn't
reason.
have to do as much as the woman
When
it comes to taking care of the child, breastfeeding and all. You can encourage her with a call and all of that.
Well, I would
Part
have
of work.
said that is debatable, but I won't say that. That is why we say sometimes we are the ones also that should talk about being marginalized, but it's okay. You win. I'll give it to you, okay? All right, that is the much we can talk about today on this segment of the show, breastfeeding. The important thing is that nursing mothers should be given priority attention, because they owe their babies a duty to survive at least that particular stage in life, because the babies depend on them exclusively at that point in time. All right, let us go on a very short break now. Then when we come back, we'll take a look at the shelf lives of products and the habits of consumers who just, procure groceries and they consume without checking the shelf lives, or what we call the expiry date. Please don't go anywhere.
was the last time you bought an item and bothered to check the expiry date to ensure that it's still in its shelf life? Now, shelf life is the period during which a product is stored and remains suitable for use or consumption. Sometimes we're in a hurry to go purchase some items, or we have this kind of blind trust that you just buy and then you pack it and you begin to use without even checking if it has expired or still suitable for use. Aya, have you ever been in that situation? You just bought something and then you started using without checking for the expiry dates.
Should I give you the answer you want to hear or the answer I need to give you?
You don't know what I want to hear. So tell me.
I'll tell you. I'll tell you what it is. Really, for most of us, to be very honest, it's only when we buy medications that we check expiry dates. Most of us don't really, do that. We don't check. We don't get to check. You are buying maybe cookies somewhere. You're buying cookies somewhere and you're checking the expiry date of cookie. It doesn't happen here in this part of the world, at least not for many of us. Some do it. I am not making general assumptions, okay? But I'm saying that for most people, it goes. But when you want to buy medication, well, maybe you do it. But we don't find it common. And okay, let's look at it together here. We are in the studio together with Ahmed Jayola, who is here in the capacity of an economics analyst. And why is he here? Well, for two reasons. One, I'm sure he's also guilty of this, not checking the expiry date of the cookies he eats, because I've seen him do it severally. But then, he's also here because he's taking a look at the consumer behavior as an economic enthusiast that he is. Ahmed Jayola, good morning. I just, spill the beans openly. Defend yourself.
Okay. I was going to ask that, Ahmed, you do that, because how can he just see he's seen you do that? Is it not a monitoring spirit?
It's not even been about a monitoring spirit. How can you just talk about the cookies I eat?
I didn't mention the name.
You don't have to mention names. What's your challenge with the cookies I eat?
Maybe you didn't give him some.
Maybe that might be the issue. It might not really be about the fact that I don't check expiry dates, or what are you talking about?
All right. Okay. Before we even go into validating my points or yours, okay, let's just have a short report that we put together to establish the tone for this discussion. Let's have it. If the report is ready, can we have it? Okay, I guess it's not ready yet. So, let us look at the habit itself. Most people that we have seen don't really bother to look at expiry dates. Why that? From the economic standpoint or from the consumer behavior standpoint, I mean.
So, there are a lot of factors. There is the cost factor. There is the hurry factor. There is the lack of awareness factor. There is the there are many issues that are tied to it. Mostly, I would look at it from the standpoint of information, because when you don't inform people, that's when a lot of people would go ahead and start buying expired products, and they will really not check the dates. Even though it is boldly written there, you can see it that, okay, so this product is valid from this period to this period. But most people won't even be conscious enough to check and see if the product is actually valid or invalid before they, consume it. A lot of people do it based on, in Lagos, for example, the rush is on. So you just, I want a bottle of this, I want a drink of that, I want to chew this, and then you just buy it and you open it. It is after you've probably opened that you now check, I didn't even check if this thing is expired or not. It's a consciousness thing, and it's because people are not informed, people are not adequately aware of the implications of taking in expired products. From the economic standpoint, it is much more of a, should I say price pressure, all right? Price pressure in the sense that when things are affordable, the tendency is for people to rush to buy those things. And of course, if you go by the standards of economics, the lower the price, the higher the likelihood that people are going to request for it, if it is a need, all right? But of course, you now come to also some I don't want to call them news, I don't want to call them reports, I want to call them rumors because they have not been fact-checked. One of those rumors is the fact that most of these products are being dumped, okay, down here. So you have a lot of products that are probably close to expiry dates, let me put it that way. And because they are close to expiry dates, some producers just ship them down to, developing countries. And after putting it, in developing countries, it now becomes an issue of, okay, so it's coming at maybe like 3 for 10 kobo. And then you just, how can it be coming for 3 for 10 kobo? Don't I know SMA gold? Don't I know this? Don't I know that? And everybody just assumes in their heads that, okay, so first of all, is this particular product, okay, so if it is this particular product, how bad can it really be after expiry? Can't we just use it? But, because people are not well informed, people tend to rush for the supply of those things. You quickly buy it and put it. It's not happening in only the third world countries. It's also happening in developed countries where, some products have already, gotten close to their shelf life expiry, and the shops there do something very, very intelligent. They call it unlabeled products. They just remove the label.
Before we get to that, let's watch these reports.
Every day, millions enter grocery stores or a neighborhood shop to buy consumables. From buying to putting in the mouth, the sequence misses a much-needed interruption, pausing to check the shelf life of the product, or what is known as the expiry date. Dangerous as this is to the informed, it happens in our climb anyway.
I have to be honest, I don't check actually. I just buy and it's because I feel like the person that is selling should know when the products or the goods you are selling has expired and take it out of the shelf. So I don't think I should be checking.
General habit too, because if you still store more than 20 people on this street, I'm sure 99.9 will tell you they don't check, because you just go there, buy and fix your stomach up.
My fellow Nigerians, is anything that you went to market to buy, or from those small quantity business seller, please always check the expiring dates.
It's not necessary for them to be buying stuff like that and it's without checking that expiring date, because them putting that expiring date, that means that if that thing expire, it's not good again on your system. It will normally affect you. So my advice for them is that for them to be checking any products like that, they should be checking the expiring date before they take it.
Interestingly, a lot of people only take the pain to look at the expiry date when they are about to buy medications, a clear pointer to the oblivion of the fact that even non-pharmaceutical products have shelf lives. Habit has a role to play here, just as much as intentional negligence or attachment to certain products. The risk is real and the consequences can be very dire. In 2018, for instance, at least 12 people died in China after consuming expired milk powder, as it was later found to be contaminated with melanin, a major cause of kidney failure. So, when next you buy products off the shelf, wouldn't you rather take the moment to check out the expiry date? Do not answer, check. Ayo Jimmy, Souq News.
Picking up from the last line of that report, check. Yes, when next you buy a product, check for the expiring date. Ahmed, when you sometimes when you want to buy products that are not manufactured here in Nigeria, I'm talking about foreign products, sometimes we've also seen that there is no expiry date on them. The expiry dates mostly are on made in Nigeria products, but for some foreign product, it is absent. Now, why is that? And why do we allow stores to have products without expiry dates, or at least visible expiry dates?
Okay, so I believe it would be better for the authorities, especially NAFDAC, the Food Drug Administration, to speak to that specifically. However, labeling of products is much more of a sentimental thing for us when it comes to relating with foreign products. We don't usually, we're not critical about it, right? We're much more critical about our own products than products manufactured from there, because we just trust that they are fine, they are good, right? But when it comes to a made in Nigerian product, that's when, the moment they see made in Nigeria, first of all go to the expiry date, right? But if it is made in Malaysia, made in this, made in that, it's probably fine. They just probably put the date there so that it's not, it's just for their country. In Nigeria, it is still valid. You hear so much rumors, so much hearsays, and the funny thing is, people fall for it because there's no, there's no standard by which they're going to weigh these comments. So you find that many of the people that we're talking about that find themselves buying this kind of products are people who do not have the amount to go and buy the ones that are valid in dates. Okay, so you have maybe let's say product A, right? Product A is still valid on the shelf, all right, and it's probably maybe like a month valid. Okay, now it still has maybe like 2-3 months to go. It is coming to the customer at maybe, I don't know, 5,000 naira. All right. Now, product B is the same product, but it has less than 2 weeks to go. And it's coming at 1,005. Please, which do you think the customers are going to run for?
But sometimes you don't even find that segmentation. They're just put together and sold at the same price.
Okay, yes. So, coming back to what you said earlier, the unlabeled products. Now, unlabeled in the sense that they don't have the expiry dates written on them. The little rumor, I would like to call it a rumor, because you can't, unless it's properly fact-checked, you cannot say it is valid, all right? The rumor is when many of these companies are shipping out their products, the first thing they do is relabel. Okay? And the relabeling is so that whenever it is that it's getting to wherever it is that they're sending it to, the person doesn't know whether it has expired or it is still valid. But because of the branding that is coming with it, we just trust that it's still valid. So sometimes you find, okay, so I've had an experience where a friend came back from a foreign country and then getting to Nigeria demanded for a particular product. And as far as we were concerned, the particular shop we're going to buy that thing from has very good products. We got it for him. He started chewing, and the next thing he just spilled this, spit it out, and we're like, what's the problem? He said, this is extremely no, not fake.
Sour.
He used to sour. That's the word. That it's sour. That is not the original taste. And we're like, this is what we eat here. And then in his bag, he had the exact same product, and he brought it out, and he gave it to us. Oh my goodness! It was almost as if we're eating dry rice and wet rice, and properly cooked rice. You understand? The one that we're buying here was like dry rice. The one that he brought was like, properly cooked rice. Tasted well, everything was fresh and all that. But this was, filling the gaps. Now, we looked at the body and we discovered that his still has about a month to go. Ours has no label. And then the idea came up that we should go and sue the shop where we buy it from. And of course, we in Africa, no. The moment you go and sue them, do you have the money to go to court? Do you have the money to do this? Do you have the money to do that? But our health is affected by many of these things. A lot of people don't even know the health implications of taking expired drugs. The things that they use to preserve these things has a period of time that it can work. The moment it gets to the point where it is expired, the product just goes, falls down flat. You're buying milk, for example, and the milk is just chaff. There's no nutrient anymore in it. It is just sand, right? So many of these things are things that people do not know, and the reason they don't know, of course, is because they are not being informed. Okay. You're not seeing information every single day ringing the bell and saying, no, don't take expired products. Okay, so there are some that come out and say, always look at the label before you eat and all those things. But how many times do you see it?
Okay. Let me just truncate that at that point. Let's look at brand loyalty. A lot of people are so loyal to a particular brand. Even when they see that it is expired, they would rather have an expired product A, whose brand they are loyal to, than a still valid product B that is probably not their kind of product.
True.
How do you speak to that? Brand loyalty as against expiry dates.
Okay, so there was a case some time ago. I don't remember exactly where or when, but I know that a particular the producer of cereals, okay, in the US, was facing a case in court. And the case was about the person selling a product to the customer that was 3 days expired. All right? And the reason, according to the presentations made by the legal personnel, the reason the case got to court is because the person, the customer, just wants to take advantage of the fact that there were a few days expired. Okay? Now, it was a few days expired. But the argument that they were making is the expiry date was just a guide. It's not, compulsorily expired at that particular date. So it still has maybe like a week more for it to expire. And that's what they were trying to prove in court. Yes, they lost the case because, the date that is written there actually, was like a week before or within a few days before the customer purchased that product. However, the general sentiment that people carried from it is expired products are actually not expired on that particular date. It still has a few. It's just a guide. So when you have people buying products of brands that they are loyal to, some people have that mentality at the back of their minds. It's this product. It's these people. They can't make a product that will just expire like that now. They would rather buy that rather than going for something that you either locally produced or something that still has a shelf life that is reading 3 months' time. They will just say, no, I just like that product. Just buy me that particular product. And that is it. Okay, the shelf life, is expired. No, don't worry. Just buy it like that. Well, Shebi is just a few days. It's still valid for a few days. Meanwhile, it's already expired.
It's like they claiming to know the product more than the manufacturer.
More than the manufacturer and the regulators.
Okay, in some places, once a product gets to maybe a month before expiration,
yes,
shops are not permitted to still have them within the shelf.
True.
They're asked to return to the manufacturers or the suppliers. Should we be looking at having a system like that, whereby manufacturers begin to recall their products once it gets to a month before expiration, so that shops who still have them do not have to keep them there and then maybe be tempted to do relabeling, to extend the expiration date by themselves because they do not trust that they can sell those products before they expire?
Now, that's an uphill battle that you want to fight. It's an uphill battle for a few reasons. Number one, when it comes to consumables, like milk, like maybe cereals, like all those things, no manufacturer is taking it back from you. You bought it. Okay? Except there is a process put in place to say, okay, by force, if this product has already spent this amount of time with the person that, with maybe the retailer, okay, and it has not been purchased, the producer or the manufacturer must recall those products. But we do not have such a culture here. I don't know of any other country, but I am 100% sure we don't have such a culture here. Number two, how do you say that you want to return a product that is maybe, it's a consumable? You're supposed to consume it, like juice, for example. You can't return it, and you can't even get your money back in the first place, right? So when you say that putting a process in place or putting a law in place where people can return products, most of the time it doesn't even apply to the consumable market. It usually applies to maybe
electronics and so on and so
sometimes
forth.
electronics, sometimes clothing, sometimes well, generally the fashion industry.
So there are some sectors that can apply.
There are some sectors that can apply, but when it comes to what do you call it, perishable goods, I think that's the correct word. Yes. So when you have perishable goods usually do not fall within that category. Non-perishables, televisions, what do you call it, phones, and so on and so forth, may still enjoy those, what do you call it, conditions. But in most cases, they don't. That is one of the reasons why you see a lot of shops have sales periods. So when the what do you call it, expiry date is beginning to approach, you don't see them, they just carry everything, just put it out there and just start selling it at half the price.
So maybe those who deal in consumables can actually employ that method when you have goods that you know will expire within a short period of time.
As a matter of fact, that is what gave birth to the non-labels that happens in America. So a lot of the products that are reaching to maybe like 1 month or 3 weeks to expiry date, the labels are torn off and they are put there. Everybody knows that these things are going to expire soon, but they are still willing to buy it.
Okay, so let's look at product design this time around. Yeah, you look at a particular, maybe cookie, for instance, or a juice, a bottle of juice. Everything looks very beautiful, well designed. Then to get to that point where the expiry date is written, you need probably a magnifying glass or something, because one, it is hidden in one corner. Which is intentional from the point of design. Don't you think manufacturers owe us that responsibility of putting it where it will be easily conspicuous?
Okay, so I believe that speaks much more to design standards, okay? And I believe the Standards Organization of Nigeria would appropriately attend to that, you know, because that's customer information.
Essentially.
And because it's consumer information, there is a standard that comes with consumer information. For every single good that you are selling, there are certain parameters, there are certain measurements of size and all those things that I believe are supposed to be in place. However, we shouldn't also shy away from the gimmicks that many manufacturers play, like you have highlighted. Take, for example, you are buying a phone. You buy a phone, and there's a manual that comes with that phone. In every phone, there is written in the manual the proximity between you and the phone. It's in every manual.
Okay.
But you will never find it on the first 3 pages. Probably last 3 pages, it won't be there. It's hidden somewhere in the fine print. Unless you are someone that is patient enough to carry the entire length of that thing.
And start reading.
And the volume, and start studying it like you have an exam tomorrow. Before you find it. So there was a case in Australia, I believe, against, I think it's, yes, against us, in Australia or Austria. I don't remember the name of the country, but I know it's against Apple. And the case was a customer sued Apple for not informing him about the potential for radiation. Okay? Now, the customer went as far as taking the phone and putting it through scientific tests to prove that the case of that particular phone was so thin that the amount of radiation that was going to go out of the phone was way much more than the amount that is written in public, documents.
Wow.
And the person brought the scientific facts, and the person brought the manual that came with the phone. The person won the case. Apple paid a lot of money. They had to recall that particular, I don't remember which
model.
That particular model of the phone, they had to recall it. All right? But you see, these are the things that we will never ask in third world countries. I've gotten an iPhone. Yeah, they bought me iPhone. Yeah, but do you know what is coming with it? A lot of people don't even know that the radiation from phones can cause cancer, can cause heart. If you are using maybe a pacemaker, it can interrupt with your heart. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't know that there is a limit, there is a limited radiation that the skin can bear because no one is informing them. The fine print will tell you radiation, unless you have it in soft copy and you probably use technology to search. That's when you find the word radiation. And then when you now see the word radiation, 3/4 of the information there, you need a scientist to come and explain it to you.
Let's look at inventory management. Now, until a customer notices that a particular product has expired on the shelf, sometimes some stores do not even know that they still have on the shelf expired products. And according to a survey done in 2021 by Food Marketing Institute, 40% of consumers do not pay attention to the expiry date before the purchase. So where you have a system of expired products being on the shelf, it means that some customers may have bought them and even used without knowing. So what mechanism can be put in place to ensure that stores must do proper inventory management, take out expired products from the shelf?
Okay, so only the policymakers can take those decisions. When you are starting up a store, especially when you're, maybe it's a supermarket or something that is going to be selling consumables or perishables, there are rules, there are guides, okay? Who enforces those things? That's the question. Because a lot of times when someone is starting up a shop, I know that in some cases you have some, regulators that come to check those places and see, okay, this is actually standard, this is standard. Okay, so what then happens the next day? They've gone yesterday. Somebody has probably given them money for transport and coke and some jolly money. And they've gone. And they will go certify, yes, they've met the standards. But then you resume the next day. And the next day, they are selling expired products. A lot of them would give it to, so the model for a lot of supermarkets now is they use the vendors. It's a vendor management system where you are selling this particular product, you bring it in, they manage your space for you, and they manage, the inventory for you, but expiry is not within their, within their purview. So to some extent, some of them still take their staff and put those staffs there. But how about those shops that don't have those staff there? Who is going to check the expiry date? Who is going to check if the inventory has finished? Most of the time, many of the shops that we're talking about or stores would have to call the supplier to bring more products. But the question is, how long did it take to finish selling those products? Because I can bet it with you, no product lasts, no product just comes on the shelf and finishes in 3 months, for example. None. So at the end of the day, you find a case where the regulators have to do more work. The regulators have to be much more alert so that many of these things and processes that affect the customer would be addressed.
Thank you very much, Ahmed Jayola, for having that brilliant discussion with us. In all of these, education plays a crucial role, and you have been educated. So if you saw this particular segment, please tell whoever missed it that when next you buy your sausage from a grocery store, please, before you put it in your mouth, interrupt the process and check the expiry date. And if it has expired, please don't assume that it's just for the fun of it. It is not for the fun of it. We need to stay alive so you can have more sausages to eat when next you get there. My name is Ayo Jimmy, and that is the show this morning. Thank you, everybody, for being part of the show. Blessing wants to say goodbye to you also.
Thank you for your time with us, and thanks to the producer of Early Exchange and also the technical crew. Tomorrow will be another time. Coming up at 10 o'clock is Business Insight with Olaoluwa Awe. See you tomorrow.